Hello, Dr. Miaken Zeigler of Zeigler Chiropractic. Welcome to our workshop. I think that education and making better, more informed decisions is vital to our expressing the best potential in our health. If you look at the leading cause of death, some of you may have heard me say this, the leading cause of death, you look at the stats, they say it's heart disease. And I will argue that the leading cause of death is actually poorly informed choices made over and over and over and over that create a lifestyle and create an internal environment of cardiovascular disease and heart disease and heart attacks. And so the more informed you can be, right? There's never been a time in history where we don't have knowledge at our fingertips in the form of Google, right? We can all look up things in an instant, but it doesn't necessarily change our behaviors and our actions. And so that's where the workshops really play a big role with, our workshops really play a big role. If you aren't muted, if you would mute yourself, that'd be great. These workshops play a big role in supporting you making better, more informed choices, while you're choosing chiropractic as a healthcare and beyond, right? And it's supporting you having an accountability partner. We all know some of these things. And when we hear it over and over and over, it starts to create, we see a translation just not with information, but we start to see implementation. We start to see that show up in our day-to-day life. And if you can just change that trajectory, right? Just change it a couple degrees. You look at 5 years down the road, that's a very different expression of health. And so there's never been a time where I think understanding your immune system is more vital than it is today. We're hearing a lot of things about just immune health, health related to that's garnered from a vaccine versus natural immunity, herd immunity, coming through this pandemic with COVID. I mean, our immune systems have really come to the forefront with, if we have an unhealthy, suppressed immune system, those people perished from COVID or had really poor outcomes or severe illness or still experiencing the detrimental effects. If you have a healthy, robust immune system, you have people who didn't really experience much when they, contracted COVID. They said, oh, I just felt fatigued and tired. Right. So what's the difference between those two? And I find that health, you can never look at somebody from the outside and really evaluate how healthy they are. Age doesn't make somebody healthy. The younger you are doesn't necessarily equate to a healthier immune system. Likewise, the more athletic you are doesn't always equate to a healthy body, healthy immune system. So there are markers that we look at, but I want you to understand your immune system in this talk. So let's get started. So there's three lines of defense when it comes to your immune system, okay? And understand when your body utilizes these 3 lines of defense, that's where you get into more intelligent responses down the road, okay? So when you are exposed to a bacteria or exposed to a virus or you're exposed to some type of pathogen, it needs to follow or break through all 3 lines of defense for intelligence to be acquired within the body and within the immune system. So let's first talk about the skin. Okay, your skin is the first line of defense. It is considered an impenetrable barrier. Okay, outside of these breaks in the skin, which is at the mouth, the nose, anus, ears, right? You have this impenetrable barrier where the skin is covered, and you've got sweat glands. And these sweat glands are constantly secreting an enzyme that break down the cell wall of any bad guy that you get exposed to in the body, on the body, okay? And I want you to understand that the cell wall, when it comes to cells, the cell wall is considered the brain of the bacteria or virus, okay? The cell wall of a bacteria or virus. So the goal is, if you can break down the cell wall of the bacteria or the virus, then you break down and kill the bacteria or virus, okay? So the sweat glands secrete an enzyme with the goal of breaking down the cell wall whenever it's exposed to, on the surface of your skin. And understand, let's just talk about the brain here. If you don't mind, I'm moving the video around here. So whatever signal goes to the brain will learn it and it will change. Okay. So by destroying the cell wall, you're destroying the bad guy. When I talk about, you got breaks in the skin, you got ears, eyes, nose, mouth, and those areas are protected by a mucous membrane, right? So if you get dust in your eye, right, or a bug flies into your eye, what happens? Your tear duct suddenly starts, creating tons of tears to, get rid of that, right? So you have this mucous membrane that actually traps and kills the bad guy, right? If you ever have any type of, bronchitis or any lung stuff, you start to get mucus and you start coughing up phlegm, right? That phlegm, and we all know that when we get sick, our phlegm turns, it's not clear, but it gets really green, right? We get boogers in our nose, it gets really green. And typically that green is an indicator that your body is fighting off or getting rid of a bacteria, right? So the more mucus that's produced, it traps and kills the bad guy, and then it wants to get rid of it. So it starts bringing it out through coughing, through blowing your nose, right? So these breaks in the skin are protected by this mucous membrane. You got mucus that's constantly being secreted to protect your body to get rid of things, okay? And one thing, this is out of Calgary News, and when I say vaccine, understand I am referring to vaccines that, like the chickenpox vaccine, the measles vaccine, more traditional vaccines, the COVID vaccine, the mRNA vaccine. It's a very different mode in terms of the delivery and the intent behind creating immunity to COVID. When I say vaccines, I'm talking about vaccines from pre-COVID times. Okay. But Calgary News, they shared in one of their segments that vaccines, because it doesn't go through all three lines of defense, it's actually injected directly into the blood. These folks are asymptomatic carriers, so they have the disease, but they're not experiencing any symptoms because they didn't go through the first line of defense and they don't look sick. So I want you to really understand this concept. In order to acquire natural immunity, you need to go through three barriers. And the first one is your skin. And so when I first start talking about mucus and you think about all like green, yellow gunk that comes out, that is a sign of an immune system being triggered and exposed to the first line of defense and your body trying to get rid of it. Okay. If we inject something directly into the blood, it doesn't go through those three lines of defense. So you may, be expressing that virus as a result of the vaccine, but you don't show it because it was directed, and directly injected. Okay. So when we talk about the three lines of defense, I'm going to use an example here. I want you to think about our body as a house, okay? And you've got your doors closed, you got your windows closed, and if a burglars are pathogen, if our burglar tries to get into the house, that first line of defense is like the front door alarm goes off, right? Either they go through the front door, they break in through the front door, boom, the front door alarm goes off. And that's a signal to our immune system that something's not right. Something's going on here and we need to send out, the appropriate immune cells to really see what's going on within the body, right? So your first line of defense is your skin, and think about it as the front door alarm to your house or to your body, okay? We're gonna build on that. And before we do, sorry, I'm moving you guys around here. It's just, I've talked about this briefly. Your immune system, if things look bad, is it bad? If somebody's vomiting, right? You got diarrhea, you got phlegm, you're coughing, sneezing. Think about, a 12-year-old kid who has a cold and they're coughing up stuff is coming out of their nose, they're really mucousy. I mean, that's gross, right? But is it bad? It looks bad, is it bad? And this is where I want to challenge you here, because all of these symptoms that our immune system is expressing itself are really positive, healthy symptoms. This is a body trying to get rid of a pathogen, a bacteria, a virus, fungus, whatever it may be, trying to get rid of a pathogen as quickly as possible, right? So if we eat something and it's food poisoning, right? We had E. coli in our food. If we take Pepto-Bismol will coat our stomach. If you ever pour Pepto-Bismol out, you'll see that it actually dries and it becomes plastic. So what Pepto-Bismol does, when you take it, it coats the outer lining of the stomach, and it doesn't allow your body to really be exposed to anything. So it just continues to pass it through. But if you're eating something that is, ridden with E. coli, you want your body to know that it's there, right? You want your body to get rid of it. So by taking Pepto-Bismol, you're allowing that pathogen to reach further into the system and cause more harm, right? So think about vomiting, think about diarrhea, think about phlegm, coughing, sneezing as healthy immune responses to a body that is trying to get rid of something that does not belong in the body, right? So is it wise to take anything that stops a symptom? And we'll argue that 9 times out of 10, it is not wise. I mean, I really want you to use critical thinking when it comes to your immune symptoms, because if you allow things to, I mean, they're there for a reason. And we'll talk about fever here in just a second. Let's start with that. Fever. At one time, it was thought that 101-degree fever was deadly, right? And then they did more research and they found 102, 103. Now it's actually pretty high. It's like 103.8 or something like that. Don't quote me on that. I'll have to look it up. So what is the purpose of the fever, right? You're exposed to something, your body temperature actually rises. What's happening with body temperature? Temperature is really important because it actually breaks down proteins. So when you raise your temperature of your body, what it's doing is actually killing pathogens, right? And it's actually signaling a lot other immune responses within your body to let your body know, hey, there's something going on here. Let's raise the temperature. When your temperature gets to a certain point, other immune cells are recruited. Okay, we'll get into that in the second line of defense. So when we're talking about using, say, an aspirin or a Tylenol to take down the fever, there are effects or impacts of that. And it doesn't necessarily allow the immune system to do its job. So first line of defense, what we know is the skin. Second line of defense is considered your non-specific white blood cell, okay? So let's go back to our house analogy. Our body is the house, right? Burglar breaks through the front door and the alarm goes off, okay? Signals a second line of defense, which is your guard dog. So you've got a guard dog right behind that door, and he is ready to fight whatever comes in. If you don't look like his family, right, then he is going to attack, right? So your immune system is looking for cells that don't look like you. And if you don't look like you're not part of the trillions of cells that make you up, then it's going to attack. So I want you to think about the guard dog like acute inflammation. So you have a mast cell. A mast cell makes things really warm, makes things really painful. It's when things get really swollen, right? Inflammation. And when you have this mast cell, it creates this change within the local environment, but that change triggers other soldier cells, we'll call them, other mast cells, other guard dogs to come to the area to take care of business. So you have the mast cell, and then you have the cytokine. And you maybe have heard a lot about the cytokine storm, of how with COVID, this cytokine storm, this inflammatory response gets so big and your immune system isn't able to modulate or manage it. But let's go back. So you have guard dog number 1 is mast cell, number 2 cytokine. So the soldier cell releases a protein that brings an army of cells. Okay, it is like, hey, the troops, time to rally. Let's get in and take care of business, right? It is non-specific. It is looking at anything that doesn't belong, and it is bringing an army of folks to take care of it. Okay, so let's think about fever. Non-specific is all about inflammation. The average temperature should be around 98.6 degrees for a normal environment. Normal, healthy, everyday life, 98.6. Your body is constantly managing that temperature. Okay, but if you're exposed to something, let's say you're exposed to a bacteria, and in order to kill that bacteria, your body needs to raise its temperature to around 102 degrees. Okay, and when you bring your temperature to 102 degrees, you're recruiting mast cells, cytokine cells, all these immune markers to take care of business. Okay, but let's think about this. Have you ever had a fever where you get really cold, you start shivering, right? So you start to load on the blankets, and then you get, oh, I'm so hot, and you start taking blankets off, start sweating, right? So that's where your body is going up to trying to get to 102. And guess what? Oh man, you're getting hot, you're starting to sweat, temperature goes up too high. We need it to be 102. So it starts too high, take the blankets off, gotta sweat, brings it back to 102. Right? So it's an intelligent process of your body trying to keep a very specific temperature to, respond to whatever bacteria has made it into the second line of defense. So again, going back to the question, when you have anti-fever medication like aspirin, Tylenol, ibuprofen, is it smart? Isn't it the intelligent response to stop the second line of defense to break the fever? Doesn't feel good. Again, all of these immune symptoms, all of these immune responses, they don't feel good. They feel pretty crappy, right? And I mean, to make areas hot and painful. But when you take these anti-fever medication, right, you reduce that fever. You actually see that it prolongs the sickness, because what are you doing? You're stopping the immune response, stopping that second line of defense from doing its job, and allowing for the bacteria to, do what it does, right? So research is actually showing when you take these medications, you're actually sick for longer periods of time. The other thing about this second line of defense is that you get really tired, you get really drowsy. The immune system takes a lot of energy, right? So are we typically really hungry? I mean, do we want to go to like the buffet when we are sick? Like, I want to eat everything? Typically not, right? We're usually like, I'm not hungry at all. Maybe I want some water or some broth. That's because your immune system generates and requires so much energy that it doesn't want to, your body doesn't want to take other energy in areas like digesting your food. Doesn't want to, convert energy to that. It wants to focus all of its energy to support immune health. So a lot of times we get tired, we get drowsy. That is our body shutting down to allow for this immune system to do what it needs to do. And I want to show you this. So just stop sharing for a second. This is, here, where are we? I want to show you a really cool YouTube video. Let's bring this down here. So right here, this is a white blood cell. Okay. This guy is called a phagocyte. I want you to look at this. So this big guy right here, he is tracking this bacteria. And what he does is he tracks this bacteria and he engulfs it, takes it in, and gets rid of it. And I want you to see this because this is happening every day, all the time in your body. You don't even have to think about it, right? This is, let's watch it again. This is innate intelligence. This is your second line of defense, doing what it needs to do every day, all the time, forever and always to take care of your body. We don't even have to think about it. Thank goodness. So what happens is, as soon as he engulfs this bacteria, he actually, well, there's, yeah, this is white second line of defense. He'll engulf, and he actually, the mast cells will, they'll disintegrate or they'll implode. I don't know. I don't remember what the word is I want to use, but they will engulf and then they will explode. I don't know if that's the word I want, but that's what I'm going with. And what happens is, in that explosion of a cell letting go of itself, it will have little markers for the immune system to say, ah, it's triggering all of these other mast cells to come on over, soldier cells, and do its thing. So, third line of defense. Now, this is really cool. Let's go to this one. I mean, if your phagocyte cell wasn't cool, this is also really cool. Your third line of defense, okay? Now, there's been a lot of questions about, you know, is vaccine immunity better than naturally acquired immunity? And I want you to understand this third line of defense. You understand anything else, that in order to trigger third line of defense, you need to go through all the layers, all lines of defense. You need to go through the skin. You need to go through the second line of defense. Now you get into the third line of defense. Now, previously, the immune system recognizes only you. And if you are not you, it will attack. With specific or acquired immune response, this is a very specific guard dog to attack a very specific, what's called antigen. And an antigen is a pathogen, okay? So let's think about our scenario of a house, right? You've got that door, you break through the door, you break through the skin, you got that guard dog. Non-specific, you break through, you're not part of the family, I'm attacking. Third line of defense. This is like you got a guard dog behind that door, and he is looking for anybody who's wearing a red shirt. If you got a yellow shirt, you got a blue shirt, you got a green shirt, doesn't matter, he won't attack you. He is very specific. So this third line of defense is where, as you go through all three lines of defense, your body is getting information about a very specific pathogen and starting to create a catalog of information so that it recognizes it later down the road. Okay, so there's something that's called cell presentation. What happens is this guard dog will recognize, oh, there's a red shirt, go after it, you know, and basically rips off the red shirt and says, hey, this is what we're looking for. And it starts to present to other cells, hey, look at this red shirt, this is what you're looking for. And it says killer cells, and it sends memory cells to attack that very specific antigen, okay? So here's the thing. So I talked about vaccines. Again, not the COVID vaccine. With a vaccine, let's think about our house here for a second. A vaccine is like you are introducing the antigen through a window, right? If you go through the window, that means you haven't, you know, sounded the front door alarm. So you don't have any guard dogs there to recognize something's going on. Okay. So you can see a burglar in there, gone through the window, making ruckus in the house, but we don't know anything. And we know that most vaccines, if not all vaccines, they're recommending boosters, right? This is why. Because when you don't go through the three lines of defense, your body, your immune system specifically, has not created a memory around the antigen or the pathogen or the virus, right? So when it shows up, it doesn't have any memory of it to create a specific antibody. It's called an antibody for an antigen, a specific antibody for that. So when you go through the three lines of defense, it has a memory of it. It can say, oh yeah, here's the key. Go make that, right? But we're seeing that vaccines, that response wears off. So you need to get boosters, you know, regularly to introduce that virus or that antigen to the body so it can make antibodies for it. Does that make sense? Now, chickenpox. Okay. We used to say, oh, once you get chickenpox, how am I doing on time? Okay. Once you get chickenpox, you know, you've got the antibody for chickenpox. You likely won't get shingles because chickenpox and shingles are the exact same virus, right? But we're seeing shingles show up more and more and more in our older population, right? As we get older. Here's the thing. Back in the day, before chickenpox vaccine, this is what we call herd immunity. So let's say person would get chickenpox, right? And our body would handle it, no problem. Within 4 or 5 days, you go through these 3 lines of defense, your body makes antibodies for it, and it takes care of chickenpox. This person gets older, they have a kid, right? Kid gets chickenpox. Goes through that process, but when the kid gets chickenpox, it exposes this person to chickenpox, again, dad to chickenpox, and body says, oh yeah, we know this one, and pulls all the antibodies back and says, oh yeah, here he is. So that exposure reminds the immune system to say, hey, yeah, we know this, keep this level of antibodies in the blood at this level, right? So they grow older. Son now has a child, right? And this child gets chickenpox. And so grandfather, dad, child are now all exposed to chickenpox. Again, reminder to the immune system saying, hey, oh yeah, here's the chickenpox, right? So back then, we didn't see as many shingles showing up in our older population because they were exposed to chickenpox, reminding the body that, hey, you know, keep this level of antibodies around for this virus. Now, chickenpox is the only virus that acts like this, according to some of the researchers that I've studied with. They say if the virus is not around, it'll drop to a certain level in the body. And so if you are exposed to a virus, if you don't have the level of antibodies present to take care of it, you could have, you know, a shingles type, you could show up with shingles, right? And so that's why we're seeing more and more shingles showing up in our older population, because number one, kids aren't getting chickenpox anymore because we are giving the vaccine to them. And so we're not having that generational exposure. And I find this interesting. Most people don't know, chickenpox is not a deadly disease. The reason we have a chickenpox vaccine is because back in the day when kids got chickenpox, mom or dad had to take work off for a couple days to take care of the kids. And so the chickenpox vaccine was produced to help support mom and dad maintaining a level of productivity at work so they didn't have to take work off. That's why we have a chickenpox vaccine. So the other thing I just wanted to share with you, because let's talk about the COVID vaccine for just a second. COVID vaccine is very different. So the COVID vaccine introduces what's called RNA into the body. And RNA is a messenger RNA to tell, it's basically the coding to create or make the spike protein, which is a part of the COVID virus. And so once the body has direction or understanding of the spike protein, it can make antibodies for that one spike protein, okay? Here's the thing, and here's the difference. If we are giving one protein of this entire virus to the immune system, it recognizes that spike protein versus, or that protein, right? Versus if you get COVID naturally and it goes through these 3 lines of defense and you create this specific acquired immune response, your immune system has seen all facets of that virus. It hasn't just seen one protein, it's seen everything. And so when they say, if you've had a coronavirus in the past, your immune system has a cross sensitivity to it. It doesn't need to see that specific coronavirus. It can see, you know, generations or mutations of that coronavirus and still have an intelligent response to it because it's seen all facets of the virus, right? So up until, you know, 2020, it was pretty well known that acquired natural immunity was much better than any, vaccine immunity that we could introduce. And so the language and the conversation has changed a bit, but when you start understanding the body and the immune system, it starts to make sense. Oh yeah, that does make sense as to why natural immunity would be better than, say, a vaccine, right? Because they're talking about, oh, COVID vaccine, it's 2 shots. Now we're talking about boosters, right? Now Israel's looking at a 3rd booster, maybe in a 4th shot at some point. And so that's where, to me, it doesn't really make sense. If you've had COVID previously, it doesn't make sense to get the vaccine because you have pretty dang good defense happening here. Does that make sense? So really the people who are in the best position are the people who have gotten COVID and recovered from it because they have natural defense, in my opinion. And I think in a lot of professionals' opinions as well. So anyway, one thing I also wanted to bring up, and I don't talk about how to boost your immune system, the cytokine storm. Let's go back to COVID for a second. The way your body regulates that cytokine storm to say, hey, there's enough. You don't need any more army. You don't need the army anymore because it's taking care of it, right? Is if you have appropriate levels of vitamin D. Vitamin D is a huge, just so vital and so important for the health of your immune system, the health of your brain, many, many things. And those who were vitamin D deficient in this last year and a half were 15 times more likely to die of COVID or to have severe illness or response to COVID. So if you are not taking a vitamin D supplement, number one, you should, no questions. And you should be getting your vitamin D levels checked on an annual basis. Vitamin D levels, if you talk to the experts who really focus on vitamin D, should be between 50 and 70 in terms of whatever their units are in the blood. You talk to folks who say the average and what should be is typically 30. I would say, well, that is like the lowest limits of average for vitamin D. If you're up in 50 to 70, your body is definitely in a better place. And so that, again, vitamin D would manage and modulate that cytokine storm saying, hey, okay, let's bring the inflammation down. You guys took care of it. Go on with your business, right? Of that second line of defense. So that's the one thing I wanted to just share with you, is that if you're not taking vitamin D, you should definitely be taking vitamin D, no question. And if you live where we live, that's the first risk factor. Okay, we can be outside every day during winter completely naked and not get enough vitamin D from the sun. So we need vitamin D, number one, based on where we live. Number two, if you are part of an older population or a more mature population, you are just automatically at risk for a vitamin D deficiency. Number three, if you have darker skin, you are also at risk. So if you fall into those 3 categories, it's like a triple whammy. All of those, there's a lot of things that play a role in supporting a healthy immune response. Vitamin D is one of them, but we can get into that in much more detail when we talk about boosting your immune system. The one thing I want to end here today, as I've gone over, is when you are experiencing symptoms, especially as a child, because we get concerned about kids and immune function, immune support. When you are expressing symptoms, that is an immune system learning. That's an immune system understanding its environment and learning how to respond to a specific pathogen or just pathogens in general. So a lot of times we're scared of symptoms or we want to get rid of symptoms. I challenge you to really just take a moment when you get sick and just reflect on, okay, what's going on in my body? How am I feeling? I know it doesn't feel good, but when my nose plugs up, I can't breathe out of my nose. That's intelligent because that is an immune system saying, hey, we can't take anymore. I don't want you breathing in anymore through your nose, because if you do, it might put us over. So it blocks everything out, right? So understand it is a great time to just, when you are feeling sick, cold, flu, whatever, it is a great time to just pause, say, okay, what's been going on in my world? If I've been not getting sleep, has stress been going up at work? How have I been eating? If I've been getting outside, getting fresh air, What's been going on in my world that potentially could impact my immune system's ability to respond to whatever it is, and how can you support that, right? Not be scared, not get rid of it, but just support that. Your body is amazing. Your body has everything it needs within you. You were born. You came from 2 cells that turned into 1, then 2, then 4, then 8. You know, I had a kid and I was like, wow, I knew the body's amazing. And then I had a kid and I was like, wow, that came from me. Right? So you have everything within you to heal. You just need to give your body the right support, the right care, and just trust that. So I would love to hear your takeaways when you guys are in the office. We simplified a lot of things here, but just understanding those lines of defense, I think, can be really wonderful in terms of it's giving you clarity on how you can support your immune system and not be so scared when something does pop up, right? I appreciate you. I look forward to your takeaways in the office, and thanks for hanging with me because I know I went over. So I'll see you guys in the office.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lena.
Thank you.
You are welcome.